okay? So don't feel intimidated by that. A lot of times if you have a response and you don't want to speak out, feel free to put it in the chat and I can just keep toggling between our chat and also our video. So we will get started. Again, you have come to the student engagement during interactive whole group and purposeful read aloud. We're going to look at these two components of our balanced literacy model together today. But before we begin, the first engagement activity I'd like to share with you is an anticipation guide. So look at the screen and just make a note on these 4 statements, whether you agree or you disagree with the content-based statement. One of the great reasons to use an anticipation guide is it activates prior knowledge for students. This type of engagement strategy allows students to already think about what they know about the topic and expand on that knowledge. It sets a precedence for what they're about to learn and allows their curiosity about the topic to spike. What are they going to learn about? Why am I doing this? And it's also a safe way for students to think about those statements without feeling that they're immediately going to be wrong. In your packet, if you access the Google Drive, you will see that this is page 1. Again, you don't have to access the packet for right now for our presentation. I will be sure to provide that Google link again for you and then also send you the hard copies through the courier as soon as possible. So our objectives today. Together, we're going to look at the balanced literacy components of our interactive whole group and purposeful read aloud. We're going to think about the different text-dependent questions at our DOK levels, our depth of knowledge levels, and how we can make sure to ensure rigorous application of these standards. We're going to be successful when we are going to deepen our understanding of how we're going to plan for our text-dependent questions and why they're important, and the different engagement activities to ensure the success for student comprehension. And at the end, you will reflect on your learning and submit to your PD rep the paper that was emailed out to you for your implementation points. So looking at your balanced literacy model, these 2 forms are forms that have been shared with you probably numerous times this year. Our balanced literacy model is divided up into 4 components. Today, during this session, we're just thinking about our interactive whole group and also our purposeful read aloud, which they may be separated on your model, but sometimes they are actually very well woven and integrated with each other, and we'll address that later. You'll also see the look-fors for when what teachers should be doing in each of these components, and then what students will be doing in balance to teachers' instruction. These are provided in that Google Drive on pages 2 and 3, but again, we do not have to access that at this point. One of the major things that I want to stress though, you'll see that the blue portion of our pie chart is the targeted small group instruction. That doesn't necessarily always represent half of our balanced literacy time. In other words, our time is not supposed to be robotic. It's not supposed to say that every day our whole group instruction is 15 minutes. Sometimes your mini lesson within that may go longer. Sometimes it may be shorter. It's going to depend on your student and the needs of your students. So it's not meant to be robotic, and it's not meant to be that every single day you're spending the exact same amount in every one of these components together. For those of you new to our county or just need a little refresher, components of a close read or an everyday instructional read, an EIR, as our county used to call it, but the state is now reterming it as close read. That includes our purposeful marking and annotating our text, reading across multiple texts for content-based areas, and planning purposeful text-dependent questions that are scaffolded to lead to a culminating task. We wanted to include student talk and other engagement strategies, and really encourage and expect that students are to cite text evidence throughout these processes and our instruction and all of these pieces leading up to a culminating project. If you are new to our county, or like I mentioned a minute ago, need a refresher, then please feel free to reach out to your instructional coach so that they can be there as a support and a guide for you to help you understand how to implement these pieces. So look at your screen. Planning with the end in mind. We have 3 statements on the screen. Preview the assessment, culminating task, review the scope and sequence of standards, and referring to formative data. So think about those 3 pieces. We're going to do an engagement strategy called rank, talk, write. I want you to think about which one you feel is the one that you start with when planning assessment. Which one of these do you start with? So the first one was preview the assessment. Second one, review the scope and sequence of standards. And 3, refer to formative data. So if you think that you preview the assessment or culminating task is the first thing that you do, give me a 1. You can just show me on your screen. Or you can put it in the chat box. If you think review the scope and sequence of standards is number 1, put it. Okay, and refer to formative data. So I'm looking at these statements now. Previewing the assessment, reviewing the scope and sequence of standards, or referring to formative data. Which one of these is going to be the most important and give me the biggest bang for my buck when I am instructing my students? Someone unmute yourself and tell me why you ranked the one you ranked.
I ranked formative data because you don't want to teach what they already know. You got to know what they already know first, because I don't want to teach them if then you can make groups. If someone doesn't know something, you wouldn't have to do a whole group if most of your kids know it.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Someone that thought previewing the assessment or culminating task should be where you begin. Unmute yourself and tell me why you were thinking that. For me, I may think that, well, I need to know how the assessment questions are worded, so I need to make sure that I am forming my text-dependent questions in that way. So I may want to start there. What about reviewing the scope and sequence of standards? Who thought that should be where we start? Well, I know we're a little shy right now, and I promise you'll feel better when I tell you the correct answer. There is no correct answer. When you're looking at those 3 pieces, you're using them interchangeably to form your lesson. So it could be that some days, yes, you're looking at the formative data, as someone mentioned before, to make sure that we're not teaching something that our students already know. Because in the classroom, 40% of what you're teaching, your students already know. Some pockets in your classroom already know 40% of that. So we have to use that formative data to say, is this where I need to teach in my whole group, or is this a skill I need to probably pull into my smaller groups? Reviewing the assessment, like I mentioned, I need to look at the question styles. I need to look at the academic vocabulary that's being used in those questions to make sure that my lessons are reflecting that I'm leading my students there, that I'm using that same terminology with them. And then always we're looking at that scope and sequence so that we know where we're going. And if you are working in ELA and teaching theme and you don't feel like that particular story is really addressing theme, well, look at the scope and sequence. Are they addressing theme in a couple more weeks? Because if they are, that could be purposely planned by that basal so that we're reaching that later. We're laying the foundation now to reach the higher parts of the standard later. So this is a really good student engagement strategy to one, give you a formative assessment. What do they already know? What are they thinking? Two, it's very safe for them to rank what they think is most important or a definition, and then to be able to talk about it. This is less intimidating student strategy for our Ls and our level 1s and level 2s because they're more willing to talk about why they're thinking it before they write it. So this is a good one that you could use as an exit strategy, maybe to look and see as a formative assessment piece, where's the lesson going to go the next day? So an easy rank, talk, write to include for engagement, because not all engagement requires our students to be jumping up and down, moving around, and up and out of their seats. So remember, you also, with these ideas of just you planning a lesson, that you're still using your item specs as the students will still be assessed on FSA. And then also the bridge documents that you have received. If you are new and haven't received that bridge, please meet with your coach to work through the bridge and see how the best standards align to our LAFS standards. So now we're going to jump in and really look at this interactive whole group instruction. On the balanced literacy model, there are a number of bullets mentioned of what we would include in this whole group time. But please know this does not mean it's a checkoff list and you're including all of them. It's really going to depend on the point of your lesson. We mentioned in there some of the resources like Benchmark Advanced that you can use. During the interactive whole group instruction, we really want this explicit instruction, this real guided idea that the teacher's doing the heavy lifting and doing the gradual release motion or gradual release, so that our students get that I do, we do, y'all do, and you do. Again, as I mentioned before, the length of the lesson will vary. It depends on what you're teaching. I mentioned theme a minute ago. Theme is a tough concept to start teaching. When we slowly start to introduce theme, those little snippets of information may only be 5-10 minutes. But then when you get into those lessons where you're comparing theme across multiple texts, those are going to be longer. It's not meant to be robotic. It's not meant to say that every mini lesson is supposed to be 5 to 10 minutes. The one thing that we want to caution, though, is that during whole group instruction, yes, we include our word study. What do our students need to know on this grade level? But we don't want our word study lessons to end up being 45 minutes long. We know that our students have come to the table this year with learning gaps and areas of need, and a lot of those areas have been word study. But this isn't the whole group time to focus solely on word study, because we still have to get them to those grade level text and the grade level standards for their comprehension. This is a time where teachers will model their higher order thinking and also include those components of the close reads and the EIRs, everyday instructional reading. We have tons of resources available to us throughout Benchmark Advanced. Personally, one of the things that I adore about this series is that students are able to write in their text. I can't really remember a time where they were provided a basal that they got to write in the book and annotate. And we know in the last few years, we've had such a push for that across education that we need students marking text and writing on text. And I think it's a really great resource right now that this has been provided for us. We also have in Benchmark Advanced opportunities for students to build their automaticity, to build up the phonics. Some teachers are still dabbling in using Common Lit, which is a free resource, and also Newsella. What are some of the other resources that you guys are using in your interactive whole group instruction? You can put it in the chat or you can speak out. In my previous group, StoryWorks was mentioned, ReadWorks was mentioned. iReady, thank you, Kristen. Those are good resources. Achieve 3000 if your school still has that. There are many resources out there. Before the textbook adoption this year, for any of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th teachers that have taught from in this grade level for more than 3 years, you spent a lot of time researching text, finding text. Where is the text? And it was very time consuming. Benchmark Advance does a really nice job of making sure that you don't have to research extra text. It's there and it's across the same content area. So as this year, as we bridge our gap between LAFs and BEST, you'll see that these text and this material is still quite appropriate because it's still meeting our FSA requirements. We just have to look at the different standards and find the nuances between main idea and central idea, as you would have picked up during that bridge training. So some of the engagement activities: gallery walk, go-go-mo, quick writes, hand signals, accountable student talk. This is just some of the options. One of the things that we want to make sure that we're addressing during our whole group instruction with these student engagement is that it's purposeful and it's pre-planned, and you've thought, what do I want my students to do with this engagement strategy? And what is the attention span and the stamina that my students currently have until I'm going to need to incorporate an engagement strategy to keep them on the hook with me, to keep them learning alongside with me? I know that this year in my schools across the board, I've heard there's a lot more discipline and a lot more attention span loss among students. So including these engagement strategies will help with the discipline, and it's just going to help the flow of this lesson and the eagerness of the students to attend to this lesson. So I'm going to show you a quick video of hand signals. Does anybody do hand signals now within their classroom for student engagement? I see some nods. Okay. All right, we're going to watch a quick little video about how hand signals can be incorporated in the lesson. And this talks about some from a virtual standpoint, but we can also use this in person. And I have provided the QR link within that Google Drive for you to re-access this video at your leisure.
Discussions in a physical classroom are tricky to manage, and conducting them by video adds a whole new level of complexity. Good discussions are inclusive, equitable, and respectful. An agreed-upon set of hand signals can reduce interruptions, allow more time to consider ideas, and provide a safe space that engages all learners. A pinky and thumb extended indicates agreement with the speaker. A single index finger expresses disagreement. One fist on top of the other shows that a student wants to build on what a classmate is saying. A raised pinky finger lets everyone know the student has a question. Making air quotes shows that a student can paraphrase a quote or concept. Students can use them to participate non-verbally, indicate when they want to speak, and how they'd like to contribute. At the beginning of every discussion, it helps to configure your screen so your view includes as many students as possible at one time. Review the hand signals so they are fresh in everyone's minds. Encourage students to use the signals to show they are engaged in the conversation, whether they plan to speak or not. Reinforce the importance of both speaking and listening by acknowledging nonverbal and verbal participants by name. With a little bit of practice, these hand signals can boost engagement and make for more equitable discussions by allowing more students to participate in ways that feel comfortable for them.
Okay, question time. Love to hear some share outs. How do you see that hand signals could benefit your whole group instruction? How do you see that hand signals could benefit your whole group instruction?
They definitely allow the quiet student to respond and be a part of the discussion or conversation.
Yes. Yeah, Julie just shared the same thing. Definitely those shy students. I was a shy student. I hated to share out. It just mortified me to think I could be wrong. One of the things that I have seen, for Amber and Julie's comment, for that shy student, we also have on the flip side the student that may be looking at everybody else's hands and just kind of copying them. Simple strategy for that. And I know you guys do it with thumbs up, thumbs down, but just having their hands like right here, right under their chin. So not everybody's seeing it. It's not this way until you know that they are comfortable and confident in making those decisions and owning their own work. One of the benefits of seeing multiple lessons throughout our county is with hand signals is it doesn't disrupt the flow of your lesson. So if you're asking for an I agree or I disagree statement, you're able to quickly get a formative assessment of what your students know without the shout outs of yeses and nos. And then sometimes some of our friends being a little louder than others, or again, the shy student not saying anything, and you're not getting that direct feedback from them to see about going through the lesson. Yes, and Christina said that it sets the tone for the lesson and the expectation. So it's a really fun way. Kids love doing them. I know that my own child, I asked her, like, does she do any hand signals? And she gave me the ones for the bathroom signals that they use in their classroom. And I just kind of giggled. I was like, yes, but we can also do some others of agree and disagree. So, you know, this is a great one for you to include, that once they get going on it, they do get excited about it and they love to participate with it. Yes, Marilyn, they're not just shouting out. They're not talking over each other. It encourages that active listening and constructive conversations. Very much so. Love it. I am going to show you a learning target and I can statements for a video that we're about to watch. Erin Grossman is a third grade teacher in Nevada. Oh, hold on. I clicked on the video again. It's going to play. Hold on. Let me get out of that. I'm rusty on my virtual learning again. Give me some time off and I lose my skills. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so Erin Grossman, to give a little background, he's a third grade teacher in Nevada. He uses Benchmark Advance. Nevada's reading series unit 3 is our unit 1. And so it's a little flip-flopped there. However, you can see how he is going to use his Benchmark Advance student booklet and some student engagement strategies as the students work to identify the main and central idea with relevant details. We're going to be looking for text-dependent questions with the different DOK levels, student engagement, and routines and management. If we were meeting together in person, I had a note recording sheet for you for this, but for today's purposes, just jot down the TDQs that you hear, the different student engagement activities that you see in place, his routines and management, and then we're going to do an engagement piece after the video and share what we have seen. So let me get his video up. He also has a website if y'all are interested in seeing more. It's Just Two Teachers. He provides extra just resources for teachers when they're teaching different units, but I will caution you, they use different standards, but it's very easy to adapt from what he has to our standards. At the very end of this, I will provide you guys with the QR links codes to his entire video in case you would like to see it. We're going to watch his whole group interactive read aloud, or I'm sorry, whole group.
Into new content and our new goal, which is largely about finding evidence around a main idea or that big claim. We want to remind ourselves all of those things that we've been learning over the last couple of weeks. And to help us do that, we're going to use a graphic organizer that draws from all of our own background knowledge. So don't open it up yet, but you all have within your close read this. And you'll see this graphic organizer, and there's 3 columns here. One, it asks you, you're going to select an animal or type of animal. So think about all the animals that we have studied over the last couple of weeks, including those things that you've done in Clever online. So you're allowed to draw that as evidence as well. So you're going to select an animal. Then you're going to think about what challenges does it have in its environment. So the place it lives, what makes it difficult for that animal? And then finally, you're going to explain what adaptation or change has taken place so it can be more successful in that environment or place that it lives. So I want you to think about the video that we watched. And one of the animals that we learned about in that video was a polar bear. So I can write here type of animal. I'm going to write polar bear. And as a quick reminder, are you guys allowed to copy what I put in here? Yes. Absolutely. So if you can't think of 3, you're allowed to steal one from me. But I think about the polar bear, and then I think about what makes its environment challenging. And some of you may remember that, and I've got lots of hands already. So think for a second, what made that environment challenging? And just turn to the person seated next to you and remind them what makes that environment challenging. All right, we're back together in 3, 2, 1. We'll cold call. Number 5, Vivid Orange. I don't have one of those, do I? So we'll go with number 2. That's you. Go ahead.
The cold weather.
All right, so we understand that where polar bears live, it's Arctic, it's really cold. And I see lots of hands, but I'm just going to add right here because I want you to be able to do this on your own. We know that it has fur, and there was something special about that fur, so I want to be precise. And again, it's great that there's all these hands, and we knew that that fur was actually translucent. The other thing that we understand about the fur and that the bear itself is it has black skin. And having fur that's translucent and black skin then allows it to adapt to this cold environment. So what you're going to do right now, you can do this individually, you can do this with pairs, you can do this as a whole group, but I want you to identify. It would be best if you could think of your own 3 animals, but if you can only think of 2, you can use mine. Identify 3 animals, explain their environmental challenge, what makes it difficult for them to survive, and then finally, what adaptations have they made to be successful?
What else do we learn about? We have to explain validation. You don't want to be sitting here. Oh, right here. CAMEL. Is that what you said? Yeah. How about to keep and then what's an environmental challenge? It's yeah. So, what is the environmental challenge? We don't know. So, like, I found this way too. So climbing and hanging. So 3 toes. Okay. So 3 toes plus claws. So the claws is the adaptation. Yeah, but what goes in the middle? What would be the challenge? The challenge is can't hang on cheese without the adaptation.
That's brilliant. All right. And we'll come back together in 3, 2, 1. Utensils down. And hands up, fine. We're going to do a silent gallery walk. So what you're going to do is you're going to move around the classroom and you're going to look at the written responses of your classmates. Don't move quite yet. The key here is we got to be at level 0 so that all of our attention, one second, I just lost 2 of you. So we're at level 0 because what you're doing is you're reading the written responses of your classmates. Because some of you wrote about gray owls, some of you chose my idea of polar bears, other people added things about camels, another one was flying frogs, so it's really clever the number of different ideas that we're seeing from your classmates, and I want you to see all of those right now. So you're going to stand up, and at level 0, you're going to move around the room, and you're going to see what other people have written. All right, and then go ahead and find your seat. All right, that was really impressive. And how about we have a couple of volunteers who then can share what they have come up with in terms of an animal, its environmental challenge, and then the adaptation that it made in order to be successful in that environment. And I think, I don't even know who my last speaker was. We'll do it this way. You have the right to pass. Number 4, daffodil yellow.
I chose iguana, and there are many predators, and the adaptations to help the animal meet this challenge is it can camouflage and it has a dwell to look bigger.
All right, perfect.
I chose cheetah, and it's very plain, and it can move fast and can camouflage.
All right, and what do you mean by very plain?
Like there's not very many trees there.
Yeah, and does anybody remember what that's described? So the environment it lives in has a specific type of name because there's not very many trees there.
Allison?
Yeah, so we're in the savanna, so it's adapted to live in the savanna. We'll do one more, and then we'll transition.
Caitlin?
I chose monkey, and having a lot of trees, and then monkeys have long tails to swing around in the trees to get around faster.
All right, so they're able to take advantage of all those trees, and so they've adapted with its tail. Really strong work. You're going to bring a pencil.
Okay. So what did y'all think of that? That snippet of his whole group instruction?
I liked it a lot. I have done some of those same things, but yeah, the kids really seemed engaged and eager, and they're learning from each other. They're looking back for spelling. I love that. I mean, there's just so many good things in there. I love that they're able to come to the front and share and lead that discussion a little bit. You know, that's creating a environment in which they feel comfortable enough to do that. Yeah, just lots of.
So just to add on, Amber, when I first saw that video clip, when I was searching for something for you guys, I was only going to watch 5 minutes and I couldn't pull myself away from it because there's so much to look at. My favorite little girl in there is the one on the green wiggly chair. Like, I know that student in my heart because I see that student in every room. And those different adaptations have been provided for that student to be successful. Again, this was about week 18. So this isn't like week 3 of school. So know that these routines have been set. What other engagement strategies did you guys notice? It's an engagement strategy and also a routine. One of the ones I also noticed is the way he calls on students. He has a code and system, he pulls a stick, but he gave them the right to pass. So why do you think that would be important, the right to pass, when he calls on somebody?
I do that in my class for various different reasons, but specifically sometimes they're having a bad day and they don't want to answer, or maybe it doesn't make sense to them, or maybe they're that student that, doesn't want to show that they don't know, or they're, just struggling in general. I mean, there's lots of different reasons, but I think everybody has a right to say, I'm just not feeling like it today.
Yes, 100%. Much like you guys right now, you're like, I don't want to share out. I'm not comfortable with it. So I'm putting it in the chat. He gave them an avenue, one, to get out. Doesn't let them off the hook for the learning, but it's allowing that classroom culture to be cohesive, to say this is a safe place. What management routine did you notice that he did when students were off task?
Can I ask a quick question referring back to what you just said? Because I was always like, I was taught in some of the PDs that when you call a student that you want them to answer something and you have wait time, you don't you want them to say something. You don't just let them say, I don't know, or pass, or so that's kind of conflicting as to do you just give them the right to pass every once in a while? I mean, because I would have kids in here that would never answer questions. They would pass all the time if I didn't, build that, expectation that I want you, it doesn't have to be right or wrong. You just that effort and that thinking process to put something out, so.
Yeah, it's not a free pass every time. You would establish that within your routines that I can allow you to pass now, but next time I am going to ask you, or I'm going to come back to you in a minute. I want you to think about it, listen to some of your peers, and I'll come right back to you. In this particular system that he had going on, they had already recorded their information. So they already had something to speak to on their paper. So that was kind of another reason why he was like, I can let you pass because I know what you've already written.
That makes sense. Okay. So I just wasn't understanding if you would let them pass all the time.
No, definitely not all the time, because you will have some that will scapegoat every time if you do.
Yeah. Okay.
I noticed that when he had 2 off task, he just calmly said, I'm waiting on 2, pause for a minute, but he didn't really miss a beat in the instruction. It wasn't a thing of go pull a clip, go do this, go do this. He just kept going. He just paused, waited, and then continued his lesson. But we can't see the direct eye contact that he makes in the video, but you will see that he looks directly at 2 different points and he's identifying the 2. They know they've been identified, and then he moves on. I thought the student talk between the 4 little girls was pretty good. One even is like, oh, this is hard, but then they work through it and they talk through it. And then you could see that they were going back in that booklet across multiple texts to find their answers, which is exactly what we want our students doing. So even in that 3rd grade first unit for them, that's what they were able to already do because those routines had been established. I will say the gallery walk, there's one piece that I feel that is missing. And that is after they have walked around and looked at each other's papers, I would have preferred to have seen a time where they went back and were able to add on or edit their own work at that time. Like maybe there was a detail that they wanted from somebody else that maybe they did not see and they needed to add. This is an edited clip that he has, so maybe that's something that he does in other lessons. we're just getting a small glimpse. But for best practices, I would want to see them come back and do something with that. Because from our video clip, we saw the gallery walk, which was beautifully done with that group of students, but then immediately moved into sharing. So
I'm sorry, Kristen. I agree with you. And he even said in his beginning part, is it okay for you to copy or take one thing that I write down? So yeah, they should have had that time to take something and add to it. And one thing that I do with the gallery walk is I allow them to say, ooh, I liked whoever they looked at or whatever they read too, so they can compliment each other.
So I love watching his video. Again, y'all, the link is amazing because it's multiple pieces of a full reading block that you can see. And we are going to watch another one here, another piece of it in a minute. But I do encourage in all of your non-spare time to pull it up. There's some great ideas. And especially since he's using our Basil, it's really nice to see how is he incorporating these different pieces within this whole group instruction with his students. So what we were going to do today, after watching the video, even though we just kind of shared about it, we were going to do the give one, get one, move on, go, go, mo, which I would have originally had you take your notes, get up, go to somebody else in the room that you were not sitting near, and give one of your observations from your notes, and then get a new idea to add to your notes. So now that you're getting new information, and you do this with students, you have them give something they know, then get something they don't know. And when you notice that the engagement level is getting loud, in other words, the students are starting to talk off task, then you call move on and they go find somebody new. There is a really great, again, I have these QR codes on all of your handouts, but there is also a really great video of a silent give one, get one, which I really enjoyed looking at because I know there are days when we've had 3 days of indoor recess, the kids are going squirrely, and there is no way I can have them get up and move around the room like this and it be as productive as I need. So the silent version is it's basically a table with boxes and they have their text dependent question at the top. They answer it in their box and then they pass their paper on to the next person and the next person adds on more information so that when their original paper gets back to them, they've got multiple viewpoints of that text dependent question. Again, I have all of those templates for you and the QR codes in the Google form, but I am going to send a hard copy to your schools so that you'll have the hard copy plus the Google.
My kids love this. I use music though, and they get to dance around. And when I stop the music, then they share.
That's awesome. That's a great way to orchestrate it. So that
Go-Go-Mo is really a great strategy. My kids love it.
Yes, it is. And it gets them up and moving, which when you're hitting some of these hard areas like theme, we need them up and moving. So we have shared what we noticed. And now we're going to merge into our purposeful read aloud. Now, when I talk about purposeful read aloud, for our purposes today, we're talking about the content-based read aloud. This is not necessarily the read aloud that you do for the love of reading. Highly encouraged. Please, teachers, model that love of reading with your students. I have vivid memories of my elementary teachers reading me their favorite books, and that allowed me to get a glimpse into that book, which I may not have normally picked up. So this type of read aloud that we're discussing today is going to be more of that content-based read aloud that many of our students struggle to gain access to. So it should be standards-based text selection here, high quality text. We want a balance of literature and informational. We want there to be pieces of that word study. We're still going to include some text-dependent questions, and we're going to model vocabulary. And as we know, across our county, vocabulary tends to be one of our weaker areas. So this is a great opportunity to embed this and include this to help our students. Great time to model your fluency. Many students do not have an avid reader at home that is reading aloud to them in our intermediate grades, and they still need that modeling and that structure. We are going to think about student engagement. However, these are not the engagement strategies where you want them out of their seat, because that's going to mess up the flow in your fluency. You'll model your higher order thinking, your metacognition, and then we're going to include our close read components. We have many resources available at all of our schools. Through Benchmark Advance, your Read Aloud handbook, it has content-specific read alouds with text-dependent questions. You have your leveled readers and you have your content-based leveled readers. Some of the student engagement strategies, hand signals, student talk, turn and talk, pause to question, anticipation guide. These are just a small sampling. The video that we're about to watch of Aaron Grossman, it was in the same day. It is his read aloud. The learning target and spotlight standard is the same, identifying the main central idea with relevant details. When we watch the video, we're going to look at his text-dependent questions, his student engagement, and his routines and management, just as we did in the previous video. And I am going to pull it up for us now.
Kristen, I don't see a video or hear it.
Oh my goodness. All right. Thank you for telling me. Hold on.
You're welcome.
Sorry. You know, when you do these, hold on. Let me go back. I apologize for that. The button, let me get to it again. I think I have way too many tabs open here. All right, here we go. Tell me if you
Isolated and
now.
cut off from many of the plants and animals they were used to, island animals often change their habits to suit their new surroundings. So what do we think this word isolated might mean? And I'll read it again while other people are thinking. Isolated and cut off from many of the plants and animals they were used to, island animals often change their habits to suit their new surroundings. What do we think isolated might mean? Johnny, yes, will you call on somebody for me? All right, and so Brian used that text and several people agree. This idea of isolated must mean cut off, so they're by themselves instead of being with the other animals on the mainland. Some large animals, they grow smaller. Key deer, and that's that image right there, found on the island of the Florida Keys are half the size of white-tailed deer living on the mainland. Animals that use their small size to hide from enemies often have fewer big predators on an island. Instead of helping them, their small size makes it harder for them to compete for food. So the little animals grow bigger. The Galapagos Islands are famous for their giant tortoises, which are big enough to carry a person. Heavier and longer than a grown man, the Komodo dragon, found on the islands of Indonesia, is the largest lizard in the world. So there's our Komodo dragon, and there's our giant tortoise of the Galapagos. Some animals change so much they no longer act like their mainland relatives at all. The marine iguanas on the Galapagos Islands are the only lizard in the world that swim and dive for food. Long ago, when the kakapos first flew to the islands of New Zealand, they were like other parrots, daytime birds with big, strong wings. But other daytime birds hunted them. So over time, kakapos became nighttime birds. With plenty of food to eat and no enemies on the ground, they grew fatter and their wings grew smaller and weaker until they could no longer fly. So we learned something special about this one. We learned that so over time, kakapos became nighttime birds. What's another word to describe animals? In this case, that would be awake at night, hunting at night. Erin, were you my last speaker? Ryan, go ahead and call somebody.
Nocturnal.
Yeah, so we have these evolved from parrots or adapted, and now they are nighttime birds or nocturnal. And some animals that were once widespread gradually died out on the mainland, where they had to compete with stronger, smarter animals. But they continue to thrive on the remote island homes. Today, tarsiers are found only on the islands of Southeast Asia. The big island of Madagascar has lakes, dry deserts, rainy forests, steep hills, and flat plains. Millions of years ago, lemurs from nearby Africa spread across the island and over time adapted to the different types of areas. Now no lemurs live in Africa, but nearly 100 different kinds can be found in Madagascar. So I want you to think, it's said right off the coast of Africa. And so before we conclude our read aloud, we understand that animals have adapted differently on islands, just because there's different predators there, there's different opportunities for them to eat. And we learned about the lemurs adapted on the island of Madagascar. So to give you a sense of where that is, let's start with where we are, Reno. And on what continent am I going to find Reno, Greg?
North America.
Yeah, so we're in North America. So when I type in Madagascar, let's see what happens. So we're moving away from the continent of North America, crossing the Atlantic. And there's Madagascar, and we learned in our reading that's off the coast of Africa.
Okay, so apologize again about not being able to see that technical malfunction on my end. So what did y'all think about that short snippet of his read aloud? I see that Julie said that love how he uses the images. Very much so, because a lot of those animals they're not going to know about because they're from Nevada. And I will reshare the Google Drive link. What else did y'all notice about his routines? Students called on each other, building that classroom culture up, that expectation that they get to choose and kind of be in charge. Saw the hand signals again. One of the things I appreciated was that it was during snack time. Not a minute was wasted because we don't have moments to waste in the classroom anymore. And that routine was set where they came, they ate, but they were still very engaged in his lesson and in his read aloud. His text dependent questions that time, we're not going to go much higher than that 2 because the students don't have the text in front of them. This read aloud, he's doing that heavy lifting. He's just explaining some facts about each of those animals. And as you had mentioned earlier, that yes, they had included the images so that the students would have an idea. I even love the Google Earth engagement part. Most of our students, even in Okaloosa County, are not going to know where Madagascar is. So taking that moment just to pull that up I saw one little boy on his knees, like he was just really enthralled with, oh, that's where that is. You know, our students don't necessarily have that knowledge outside of our school and our city. So it's a really easy way to engage students without it taking a lot of prep time on your part. So looking back at our beginning anticipation guide. So reviewing, an anticipation guide should always be brought back so the students can think about their answers at the beginning. And all 4 of these statements are I agree statements. 60 to 80% should be at that DOK2 level, but that doesn't mean that we don't still address the DOK1. We still need our interactive whole group instruction to expose all students to our grade level standards, that those text dependent questions need to be sequenced and scaffolded to lead students to the culminating task, and that we also need to include our purposely planned student engagement activities, and they're not just on the fly, because if they're on the fly and you've never really gone through a gallery walk, it won't be as successful, and you may not be a strategy you want to go to again. Don't worry about doing the quick write in lieu of our time right now, but just remember that your instructional coach is available for additional support. Please reach out for them. The good news is we do not have crazy professional development or planning anymore. So we're going to be on campus again and really be able to help and work with you guys and work with your students. If you did not put your name and your school in the chat, please do. Not only am I going to send you the hard copies of the documents that were in the Google folder, but we also bought fun sticky notes for everybody so that you could write your text dependent questions in your books and fun things like that. And I'm just going to send them to you to your school and probably distributed by your coach if I had to guess, because I think that's going to be a lot of manila envelopes going out to all these sessions. Otherwise, our poor courier people will not like us very much. Do y'all have any questions as we wrap up this one? Well, thank you for your time today. And if you do have questions, don't hesitate. Shoot one of us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But I hope you have a great rest of the day and a great second semester.